Welcome to Navigate STL Schools, a podcast. I'm Anastasia, and I'm here with Ymani Wince, the creator and owner of Noir Bookshop. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, just a little bit.
Well, my name is Ymani. I grew up here in St. Louis. I'm a product of Ferguson-Florissant School District. I went to McClure North High School. I really love St. Louis. I have a background in journalism and storytelling and writing and just communicating. But I also have a very deep love for books and literature and just learning overall and revering Black history and my ancestors and my family. And so that's really what my creative pursuits and sort of creative work is about right now.
Your glasses say I love books, and I love that. Okay, so you said you're a product of Ferg Floor. Can you tell us about your K-12 education story?
Yeah, so I did attend private school from about third grade through sixth grade. And then middle school on, my dad really wanted me to have that experience of going to public school and interacting with all different types of kids and that experience and getting to play sports and activities and things like that. And so middle school, I went to Cross Keys Middle, which is in Ferguson-Florissant. And then for high school, McClure North, where I was involved in journalism and newspaper, the marching band, other creative things, math club for a time. But I really enjoyed my high school experience and the teachers and some of the teachers I keep up with to this day. So, yeah.
Okay, so what is Noir Bookshop?
So back in 2020, during the quarantine, I was at home like pretty much everyone else. And I was really on Instagram and social media and seeing a bunch of old, rare vintage Black literature and certain covers through the years as they'd been printed. So think Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, books that have been printed in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And just seeing how those covers changed over the years, I was really interested in it. And I personally did not read Black literature in high school, and I think there was maybe one book, which was Uncle Tom's Cabin, and maybe Their Eyes Were Watching God, but Black literature was not uplifted as much as, I guess, white literature, English literature, and so I really didn't start reading Black titles until my senior year of college at University of Missouri, Mizzou, and it just kind of, once you read something, it just opens your whole world to other things. And so in 2020, I started collecting these books of Black literature, and I really wanted people in the community to read more Black books, to read Toni Morrison, to read those banned titles. And so I kind of just started posting them on an Instagram account called The Little Noir Library. And people were really interested in where I was getting these books and learning about the background stories to some of these titles. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about quarantine was the curbside pickup. And so I would always order books from local bookstores, and it was refreshing and fun. And I looked forward to being able to go outside for a time during quarantine just to go pick up a book. Mm-hmm. And so as I was sourcing these vintage copies of Black literature, I did the same thing. And so I was selling them to people for next to nothing, and they would come to my apartment and pick them up from my front door. And so people really liked it, and I enjoyed it, and it was just a hobby, but it really got me thinking about how people were reading in the city. And even though I'm a person that loves to read, has always loved books, would rather read a book than go to recess when I was a kid, not everybody is like me, you know? And so reading can be a real privilege and a leisure, but I was wondering how to get more Black books into the community. And so by 2021, I was really thinking about it, and I was watching videos on YouTube, and I was seeing a lot of Black women around my age. At that time, I was 27. Seeing a lot of Black women around my age opening bookstores that kind of had a theme, or I was really seeing how bookstores were rooted in the community and how they became third spaces. And historically, they've always been third spaces for Black people and safe havens. And I felt like St. Louis didn't have that type of vibe of a bookstore. But also my background in journalism, I was an intern at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch the day that Mike Brown got killed. And so I was sitting across from the crime desk, and I could hear all of the information that was coming through as it was happening. And that experience really changed how I felt about being a journalist, about being a reporter, and all of those things. And so as I was creating this bookstore and as it was coming together, I thought about what purpose would the bookstore have held if it was around during that time? or if it was around during the Black Liberation Movement. Sometimes I think about the sort of work, or even having a Black bookstore back during my grandparents' time would have had me on an FBI watch list, you know? And
Absolutely.
so that's not something that I take lightly, or a reading that I take lightly. And so December of 2021, I announced that I wanted to not only open a Black bookstore, but to put it on the south side of St. Louis, specifically because St. Louis City is a book desert, and there are no spaces where you could buy not just Black literature, but current bestsellers, current literature, front list titles in the community.
Okay. I was going to ask you this question later, but you mentioned it. Where in South City are you?
So we're located on Cherokee Street, which is stamped as the creative community of Missouri. A lot of people don't know that, but Cherokee Street is very colorful, from Antique Row, which is the side that I'm on, and then there's the other side of Cherokee where there's the authentic Mexican and Hispanic restaurants, the markets, other vintage stores, floral shops, all that sort of thing. And so it's a very eclectic sort of place, and I feel like Cherokee Street has always been very welcoming. But not only that, when I was in college, I would always visit Cherokee Street when I would come home. And then even after I finished college, I was working at Nestle Purina over on Shoto. And so Cherokee Street was right there, and I would always hang out with friends. And really, a lot of the milestones of my life kind of happened on Cherokee Street.
Awesome. So what inspired your love of reading?
My grandmother. I was the only kid in my pre-K that could read at graduation, and I always remember that. And I remember spending a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandma was really big on reading and teaching me how to read and teaching my sister how to read, and doing flashcards with us and Leapfrog and all of those sort of brain games. And she would order the Highlights magazines for kids. I love those. And my grandmother lived near Jamestown Mall, and so that was when Jamestown Mall had Walden Books, and I loved going there. And it was just, there was something about the lighting in that store that just made the books look so inviting and warm and shiny covers. And I just remember loved going to bookstores and looking at the kids section and looking at the breadth of titles and so many things. And my parents always honored my love of reading. Like I said, I was the kid who liked to read instead of go to recess. And I used to go to summer camp at the Palace skating rink and the YMCA. And I was the kid that always had the books. And I would not want to go outside. And if we did, I was sitting somewhere in the shade with a book reading. And so I just always had people in my life, like my dad and my grandparents and my mom and my stepmom, who really just honored everything that I was interested in books. And then once they put that Barnes & Noble next to the Schnucks over by Cross Keys, it was over, because I would always ask my mom when she was going to the grocery store, can I go with you? Can I go with you? And I would just hang out in Barnes & Noble. And I always had gift cards with book money on it. And so that was really just my thing. That was my hobby. That was always who I've been, and just collecting books on books on books.
So you mentioned you didn't start reading African American authors until your senior year of college. What kind of sparked that desire for you?
I think at that time, because this was around 2016, 2015, I think I was really getting into that app Goodreads, where you could log all of the books that you've read. You can look what your friends are reading, mark books that you wanted to read, and I was really interested in that. And so I started putting together my own sort of book list, because I wanted to read the classic Black novels that people were saying you should read. And I think my senior year, I was in my second African American Studies class, and we were talking about some of these titles, and I was interested in it, and Malcolm X just kept coming up. And I'd seen the movie with Denzel Washington, but I really wanted to read the book. And as I've gotten older, my taste in genres has transformed from fiction, young adult, mysteries, sort of, cute stories, to I'm really interested in memoirs and biographies and how this person did that, etc. And so I read Malcolm X first, and that kind of just set it off for me, to the point where I almost missed an exam because I was reading it and I had to sprint across campus to get to this exam. But then I read Toni Morrison's Sula, and then I read James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. And by that point, I threw the book across the room, and I was hooked on these stories, because it opened my mind up to seeing that even though this book was published in 1971, even though this was published in 68, these stories feel real and I can see real characters in my life and real situations that have happened that reinforce the Black experience and what my grandparents' generation was talking about, what Nat Turner was talking about, what Frederick Douglass was talking about. It's all still relevant.
Yeah, one of the things that I really, really love for current children's television is this idea of children being able to see themselves in the cartoons and the characters that they watch. Like, we grew up with monsters and colorful blobs and Junie B. Jones, but they get Gracie's Corner and all of these other amazing characters of color. What do you think that it does to like a child's psychology to be able to actually see themselves in the stories and to see characters that look like their family members or have similar mannerisms?
It makes them more interested in reading. A lot of children, because they struggle with the mechanics of reading itself and comprehension of reading, it really discourages them from even reading a chapter book or going beyond what they feel their own limitations are. So seeing yourself in a book and seeing certain characters or even having a teacher talking about the book, it gets them interested. And then I've also noticed in my own experience, being the person that's administering the story, administering the knowledge, or even me coming across as excited about a book, kids really soak that up and they eat that up. And I think a lot of the times they just want the attention and to be around somebody that's interested and encouraging with whatever it is that they're going through. And especially with books, if you really show a sort of excitement for a book, and if you encourage children, and if they see themselves in these characters, and if you bring them stories that relate to what they're going through and kind of read the room with what children you're around, that really encourages them to want to either get to know you more and get to know books more, but it really just opens up that curiosity for them, and it encourages them to just try.
When is the first time that you recall encountering a Black character in a book? Or do you have any Black children's characters?
Yeah. I think for a lot of Black girls, we read Addie from American Girl. And I think that's important to point out because there were certain stores and brands growing up that I remember that I didn't see myself in, like Justice or Limited To for clothes, or Claire's. And, as a little girl, you see these hair extensions in the store with the glitter and all this. And there was a store at the Galleria where you could have a whole makeover party and they would do your hair and all this other stuff. And it never felt Black girl friendly, And so American Girl was one of those stores where, oh, I would love a doll. It's really cool to have that experience, to have lunch, to have a makeover and have tea and all that, and have a doll that you can dress. But there were never really any, especially growing up. I'm 30 now, so I didn't see those sorts of dolls, maybe one or two Black dolls or maybe a Black Barbie. But the American Girl experience itself, sometimes I guess it could feel inaccessible because one, the dolls are very expensive, and two, if I was going to go, I wanted a doll that looked like me. And so for them to have a book series about these core characters throughout history, and Addie was one of them, at that time, I was very excited to read that and to read about her journey and to read about the triumph. And I was intrigued by the details of Blackness that were included, like the recipes and what she was wearing and how her mom talked and the accuracy of where they migrated from and their life in Philadelphia. And even now, if you were to go and read about what happened in Philadelphia as far as freed former enslaved people, is very close to what was happening in Addie. And at the time, I didn't know that, but to see a Black girl in a book, I really enjoyed that.
So one of the things that we do here is we look at a lot of test scores, we look at a lot of data, and we try to help parents make decisions based off of that. We recently got back the test scores for the MAP reading exam, or ELA, for third grade this year. And it was really disheartening because there are only 10 schools in the city that have above a 30% reading proficiency. And I know that as a part of your story, you're working really hard to end book deserts in St. Louis. And I was told by one of my staff members about these book vending machines that you're doing. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so the vending machine idea itself kind of happened all at once, I guess. I've been in the brick and mortar space for almost 2 years, and so I've experienced all seasons on Cherokee Street and seeing when are the more foot traffic seasons and months and weeks versus the lull where after Christmas and holiday shopping and how that works. And so I was really thinking about how to get more people to the store or how to get more books into the community. And so I think a lot about what my business's stance is in the community as a business that is for profit currently. And so I think about it in terms of real estate. Even though I sell books, my goal was to be in different spaces all at once and kind of call people back to the store by seeing the brand out in the community. And so I instantly thought a vending machine. But at the same time, I was working in a school with kids every single day and teaching them how to read and doing reading strategies and growing libraries in schools. And I was just noticing how kids didn't understand the concept of borrowing. They didn't understand the concept of going to a library. And a lot of the children that I worked with, technically all of them were pandemic kids. And so a lot of them hadn't started school until school started back after being shut down. And especially kids that were going to kindergarten, they weren't able to go to pre-K. They were going to maybe daycare or staying at home. And so especially in the Black community, there is a lot of socioeconomic disparity, and there are children that come from one-parent homes or live with grandparents or an aunt or uncle or a bunch of siblings, and sometimes parents are stretched thin where they're providing and going to work and making sure that their kids are safe and fed and all of that. And some of these sort of extracurricular activities or things that are privileged, especially books, those can fall to the wayside. There were kids who never even been to a library or understood. And so when I was working as a librarian in the school, the kids would ask, can I take this home? I don't have any money to pay for it. Or can I call my mom and ask if she can buy this? And they just didn't understand that it was a borrowing sort of thing. And so we were teaching the students how to go to a library and how to look for books and all of that. And so as I was thinking about my vending machine for my own store, I was really thinking about the literacy rates in St. Louis and kids and all of that, because even though I worked at that school and there was impact made at that school, there were so many other kids in the community and so many other kids who didn't go to charter schools or didn't go to schools that had budgets for books and all of that. And so I thought the vending machine should be in places where kids are frequenting, like community centers, Head Start centers, the YMCA, places like that, the Boys and Girls Club, where not only are they knowing that these books will be free by interacting with this vending machine, but also they're at a safe place. And so I want the vending machine to serve as a sort of guidepost or sort of lighthouse for kids to know these books are free, but also you can be in a safe place and have other adults there that will care and help you live a good life.
So what is it like doing this work for you as a young Black female?
That's a big question. I think sometimes I have moments where I kind of snap out of the bubble of running a business and also doing community work. And then I kind of look at things that come up online about me, and then it's really surreal sometimes. And I think sometimes I have to step back and look at, wow, I did this happened, or the business was honored for this, or I was in this magazine. And I don't really internalize it too much or think about it as, wow, I'm amazing. It doesn't feel like that at all. It just feels like stepping stones for the mission to be what I want it to be. I don't see it as me becoming a brand or me being the person in the spotlight. It's all about the business becoming what I want it to be. But to do this work is incredibly rewarding. There are times where any entrepreneur can relate to the highs and the lows and the in-betweens and the hard parts. But then there are times where, like this, we're talking about it and I'm just kind of internalizing and reflecting. And then there's times where I'm out in the community and I'm giving away books for free and seeing how excited people are. And it just reinforces that, white supremacy is wrong about Black people. It's wrong about our intellect and the things that we're interested in. And your socioeconomic status or what's in your bank account doesn't determine what's going on in your head and what you believe and how smart you are. And so it's incredibly rewarding to kind of be in this space where I don't necessarily want people to be as excited about books as me, but I want them to see books as as a tool and as an access to whatever it is that they want, because I truly believe that, as I say, books are good, but they've done a lot for me, and they've done a lot for a lot of people.
So random, but that's honestly the point of the Book of Eli. The movie is one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe they were talking about the Bible, but books in general have that same kind of power to help evolve a person's mind. You said you don't really want people to love books as much as you, but like, what if there is a parent who wants their child to love books as much as you do? What tips or tricks do you have to help people get their kids excited about reading, excited about literature?
Honestly, I thought about this earlier today. When I think about my own journey with books, my parents and my family, they never had any concrete expectations of what I should do with my life, or who I should be. They just taught me how to read. My grandmother taught me how to read, and they just made it available for me. And I think part of that was my own interest in books, but I think if you really encourage children and you just honor whatever it is that they're interested in, it will happen. I've seen, even in my own experience, offering certain books on certain topics to kids that I know this student would actually like, because I know that they're interested in X, Y, and Z, and that really gets them interested. Or even talking about a book in a conversational way and telling it like a story you heard, or telling it like something you heard online. Kids will be like, "Ooh, what happened next?" And then you go, "Oh, it was in this book." And then they're interested in reading it. But I think for parents, the biggest thing is just to honor whatever it is that their kid loves and whatever subject it is, and not try to force a certain topic or a certain type of book, but to really just give them something that you know that they would be interested in. A lot of kids read manga and graphic novels,
Mm-hmm.
and those are really interesting. And I didn't start reading those until 2023, and I was hooked, because it feels like you're there, you're engrossed in the story. And while you're reading, you're building comprehension, you're building phonemic awareness, you're building reading speed. And if all your kid likes to read is graphic novels, that's fine. Just keep honoring whatever it is that they're interested in.
So, having worked in a school, would and running this bookstore and putting out these book vending machines, what is something that gives you hope about the future of education in St. Louis?
I think there are so many groups in St. Louis that are working to push the literacy needle forward. And I find that to be really hopeful. And then I also think about bookstores across the country and other literacy efforts that are happening across the country. And that's hopeful, because I'm just seeing how people are supporting the community where they reside, and how groups like Ready Readers in St. Louis is going into actual communities and having reading captains and reading volunteers, and other groups like Black Men Read STL that are reading to Black kids in schools, and showing up with their presence as Black men who are, helping children. And then there's I See Me bookstore that shines as a beacon for Black children's literature, and just brown children and children of color, and having book fairs and things like that. And then there's the Belief Projects, and all of these groups in St. Louis that are really trying to push it forward because they care. There's the parents and the Coalition for Kids, and people that are really trying to keep SLPS in check as far as literacy and getting kids what they need. So I'm really encouraged by the people who are showing, we don't play about our kids, and Black children deserve to live a life of hope and joy and their best possibilities. And there's so many people in the city that are helping push that forward. So for me, it doesn't feel like competition. It feels like you're supporting your community in the way that you see fit.
I love that. A community collaboration as like an inspiration for education. Perfect. I think for me, one of the shockers is that my nephew is an avid reader. He's about to have a birthday coming up. And over the summer, we started a book club. So I've been going back and reading children's literature. And I think it's so funny. Like we'll go on we're going to go like to a trampoline park or something. And he's in the car with the book. And for me, that's super heartwarming. What do you think in like the context of your work is something that you just realized that was super unexpected?
I think it's been the different types of walks of life that have come into my store. And you hear all the time, Black people are not a monolith. We're not all the same. But that is something that I've really come across and have experienced tangibly in real life. I've gotten customers that you would never know this person was adopted by a white family and they have no context for Black culture or Black literature, or this person was born in Cameroon but grew up in Germany, and they come in and they're asking all these questions and they're excited. And then I have a Juneteenth barbecue and I can teach people about the history of Juneteenth and all of its facets. And then you see people that just come in the store that they have no context for Black history at all, but they're eager and interested in learning. And that's something that really surprised me. And I think the other surprise was that I thought that I was building a bookstore as a business, but the bookstore really provided me with opportunities outside of the store that have become my main focus and my main mission. And I always say that the store is kind of a living, breathing idea. And I'm not afraid to kind of pivot at any moment, I guess. But the really surprising part is just how strongly community has become for my business and how important it is, and how I didn't expect for it to be my main concern. I thought I was selling books at first, but I'm not.
Awesome. So how do you find the Black authors that you have in your store?
So I do a lot of research and I read a lot. I'm always looking at catalogs that are sent to me by publishers. I keep my ear to the streets on TikTok, and so I'm listening to what the girls are reading and what the girls are into, and then also I gotta keep my ear to the streets with the kids. Pete the Cat went double platinum last year in the schools, and so I have to keep up with what they like, even if it's not Black authors, and so that's really important too. Even though I am passionate about Black authors and BIPOC authors, I guess, I really want kids to just read whatever they're interested in. And so in the store, all of the books that are for donation based or just free, they're a breadth of authors, because kids will look at characters that they know, things that they're interested in. And so I try not to push a certain thing, but then with older kids, I try to get them thinking and introduce books like Monday's Not Coming, or by Tiffany D. Jackson, or other heavier books like The Hate You Give, and just to really get them thinking about where they show up in the world. But yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of where we show up in the world, how do people find you? How do they connect with your bookstore? How do they buy books? How do they donate books?
Yeah, so I'm everywhere. You can find the Noir Bookshop at noirbookshop.com. And on our homepage, we're running our Books Are Good campaign, which is to publicize Onyx, the book vending machine. That will be here very soon. Onyx will be at the Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club over at 2901 North Grand, which I'm really excited about. And so on my homepage on my website, you can either donate to the machine itself, which is a tax deductible donation. And then you can also go to my wish list at bookshop.org and look at the wish list for the books for the machine and buy books for the machine, or buy whatever book that you want and have it shipped to the store, and that will be part of the machine. Or you can donate directly to our PayPal fund link to donate directly to the store. You can find us at Instagram at the Noir Bookshop, Facebook the Noir Bookshop, X, formerly known as Twitter, at the Noir Bookshop.
Is Mama named it Twitter? I'm calling it Twitter.
His mama named him Twitter. Okay, Twitterius. But yeah, those are all the places you can find me, and me personally, Ymani Wince on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your love of books with the community. And thank you so much for the work that you do in St. Louis as a young Black entrepreneur. Thank you guys all for listening. Until next time.